Hello, welcome to part 2 of the audio lecture on Impressionism. Now there's this little joke about the Impressionists, and that joke says, what did the Impressionists do? Well, they had lunch and they went out in boats and then they painted it. Well, here we have the luncheon of the boating party. And what's fun about this piece is that it really depicts the Impressionists and their girlfriends and models. So as we look at this piece and we've discussed the loose style, I want you to look at a detail. Okay, notice these little wine bottles here. Now, look at them. This is, to me, what shows the real mastery of Renoir. Because what he does is, it's a little bit hard to see on this slide, but with one brushstroke he makes this light look like light, and yet he doesn't overwork it or kind of worry over it as you might see in some of the academic work. Now what we have on the right is a painting by Mary Cassatt. And what I want you to notice about this is that it strongly shows the influence of Japanese prints, both in its simplicity of form, its color, and also this whole composition of the large sort of blocky shapes. Now during this time, in the late 1800s, trade with Japan had recently expanded, and everything Japanese became all the rage in Paris at the time of the Impressionists. This influence is seen in much of the art of the period. And also there are letters that indicate, as I said earlier, that good old Pissarro, the grandfather of the Impressionists, made money by painting Japanese fans, and he sold these in order to support himself and other artists. In contrast to the loose brushstrokes of Renoir, here we have the careful color application of Georges Seurat. Now this painting, it's 7 feet tall, 10 feet wide, okay, and he painted it using this technique he called it Divisionism. And it's a lot like broken color, where you put one dot of one color and another dot of another color near each other, and then the eye is going to blend them. But what's different about Georges Seurat's work is that he was very careful and methodical. So when you look at these paintings up close, the dots are precise. They are very carefully planned. Now think about this. This guy's layering his dots, because you don't just do one layer, you do dot upon dot. And he's painting a painting that is 7 feet tall by 10 feet wide. It took him 2 years to do it. It's considered now a masterpiece. Now, unfortunately, Seurat died of an illness at the age of 32, so this is really what we get to see of him in his life. While the Impressionist ideas were sort of slow to be accepted in Europe, in the United States, artists were much more open to them. We have this painting, Arrangement in Gray and Black, by James Whistler. We looked at this in Module 1. Now, Whistler was clearly influenced by the work of Manet and by Japanese prints, but the painting to the left in 1874 is also by James Whistler, and it's called Nocturne in Gold and Black, The Falling Rocket. It shows how this artist departed ever more from realism into portraying his emotional response to this event. Now remember, the one up above, which is called Arrangement in Gray and Black, isn't really Whistler's mother. It's not his mother. That's not the name of his painting. It's just the artist experimenting with these values, shapes, and patterns in order to make an interesting composition. So, to wind up this lecture on Impressionism, I want to talk about Manet once again. As this artist grew older, he became somewhat disillusioned with the fast life of the nightclubs and cafes. This particular painting shows a very famous nightclub, but at closer inspection it tells a deeper story. This young barmaid has these eyes that are haunting and sort of lost, and reflected in the mirror behind the back of the bar, behind her back, is a man who is speaking to her. Also what you see is a busy atmosphere of the room, and I don't know if you can see this. Okay, so here she is, here's the mirror, and here's the guy on trapeze, it's right up here. Here's his little legs and here's his little feet, and all we see is this guy from the knees down. Okay, so what exactly is this man asking? Is he asking for a drink? Is he asking for something else? And what of this woman? See, There's such a sadness and a vacancy in her eyes. This is, again, Manet's way of really maybe protesting or dealing with what happens when a person spends too much time partying in the nightclubs. The Impressionists held a total of 8 exhibitions in this period between 1874 and 1889, 15 years. In that time, they went from a group of rebellious young artists into and became an established artistic movement. And as an established movement, what do? They created rules for Impressionists. Now, the Impressionist movement split as some artists rebelled against the new rules. Remember, these were artists that rebelled against the rules of the academic period to begin with. And another generation of artists was coming in behind them, and they were exploring even newer ways of redefining art. Now they came on the scene, and eventually they became known as what we call the post-Impressionists, although their work did overlap somewhat with the Impressionists. This artist, Manet, sold 2 paintings in his lifetime, and yet he's considered to be one of the great masters. With the next module, we're going to continue this exploration and take a look at the post-Impressionist artists. That completes the lecture on Impressionism. Thanks for listening.